and welcome everybody to the Star Series. Tonight we're going to have some spoken word artists for you, some poets, spoken word folk, and folks of the like. You will see some imagery tonight from a photographer. That photographer's name is Brandon Cabral. Brandon Cabral is a photographer from New Bedford, Mass. He explains his work as a bit of science, magic, and luck. His goal is to share his perspective and aesthetic with the world, capturing life through his eyes as he sees it. You can find Brandon on Instagram at Cabralism. I'll be talking a little bit more about him later, but I wanted to let everybody know to pay attention to the images that are going on behind the readers, so that way you could see his work as well. So tonight, we have 6 readers for you guys, myself being one of them. This is our 3rd time doing this. Thank you all for tuning in. Our first reader of the night, her name is Emma Young. Beginning with a love of language, Emma is a writer, designer, and craftsperson, working toward the articulation of ideas. She leads accessible workshops and book arts for all ages and has worked on literacy projects with public libraries and nonprofit organizations. She is completing her MFA in visual design at UMass Dartmouth and has an upcoming feature on the Cape and Islands NPR on their Poetry Sunday program. She served as the Poet Laureate of the town of West Tisbury, where she runs a small design studio focused on typeset, letterpress printing, and handmade papers. The images that you will see during her set are of her own artwork. So first, tonight, to read for you guys, I'm going to call up Emma Young. Emma, please come on up.
Hi, and thank you for having me. Thank you, Nick. I'm glad to be here. As he said, I'm finishing my MFA, so that's one of the reasons I'm here on this stage. And so I'll talk a little bit about my work as well. Some of the visuals that you're seeing are from my 35 millimeter photographs. So these are film photographs that I used in my printmaking process. That's on display in our gallery right now. I want to just start by dedicating my work to my great aunt, Rosemary Dyes, who we lost this winter. And she was one of my great teachers in finding joy and magic in work and in the written word. So I want to start with her name because just saying the names of those we love and have lost or are underrepresented gives them and us power. So naming is an important part of my creative practice. And in the words of the great Ursula K. Le Guin, for magic consists in this, that true naming of a thing. So I'll say more about the project later on, but I just want to drop into a few poems. This first poem is called After Quiet. In the morning, I search for it, its language. My first few breaths, plus movement, some music, come out as small jokes, just fragments. I slip, sound British, never quite knowing why and what makes humor delicious. Its sounds, inflections, for what else are predilections until articulated? What are words until they're tasted? And the next poem is called Stones. I make cherry trees in fruit, almost too sweet, with a seat beside the trunk to sit and eat. I make amulets adorning apricot stones, with the ability to clear thunder clouds and bring sun to the riverbed. I rinsed my hair in the cold water, each twist a wish, becoming truth as it turns golden. Then I make lightning when home to watch from my window. This is called To Continue. A certain precariousness, balancing an empty water glass on a soft edge. Realizing the birds don't recognize you as human. Staying still enough to sustain perfect humanlessness. A hummingbird measures the slimmest margin needed to pass. Small, warm gust, the glass falls but doesn't break, as if it recalls before it cooled to solid. I return to my shape, checking for thin fractures. My consciousness is long, with the ability to continue, a bit more human, glass, bird. And one more poem, also about magic. It's called Find Inside. Someone doesn't want me, and I don't need that me anymore. Sure, I feel sad, but fine. My realm is fun inside. I'm grabbing books with Dolly Parton at the public library. The printing press is rolling green ink, and I'm a surfer in the tube. What are the odds I'm matching tie-dye with the cute guy fixing bikes? After we share stories at the party, we shoot hoops. Settling back into my reality, I'm me, a mage. So a little bit more about the project that's on display in the gallery. It's called Varied Clarity, an Index. So I call the installation my index to the magic of labor and the materiality of language. And I work in a number of crafts, and so for this project I grew plants for paper making fibers, and I also grew the flowers used to dye it. So the projections show some images from my garden, amongst other film photographs, and so I dyed the paper fiber and cloth and thread for weaving and made paper. I also made inks out of the recycled dye. So as I'm spending hours making paper and weaving cloth or stirring the dye pot, my process really let me name my materials. And it really felt like magic when the little seeds I had planted became colorful papers and inks, and I could print my poems with them. So I started to realize that the writing that I was making, the actual language I was creating, was also material, so much material like the paper and cloth. So I have a quote here from one of my favorite thinkers, Donna Haraway, who talks about this. She writes, I was more and more compelled by the physical process of writing, creating a tissue of words, by the kind of quasi-dream state writing puts me, and I think most writers, into. By the experience of working through a sentence and finding that it's committed me to half a dozen positions that I don't hold, literally because of the material density of language, and by finding that writing is itself a material process of thinking, that there's no thinking process outside of some materiality. I have friends for whom the injunction to be clear remains right at the top of their commitments. It's always struck me that the injunction to be clear is a very strange goal because it assumes a kind of physical transparency, that if you could just clean up your act, somehow the materiality of writing would disappear. So I love that quote, and I love the phrase, the injunction to be clear, and that our culture is always asking us to be clear And I personally can only really offer varied clarity, or like my variation of clarity. So, but it does also say how powerful language is. It's like this force that you have to reckon with, even as a writer. I'm going to read another quote by Alessandra Pomerico, who's a scholar and an educator. And she says, "The act of naming, which informs ways of thinking, is not neutral and is based on stratifications of conventions that are historically determined. Our language contains assumptions and continually reproduces the worldview it projects. Literacy and pedagogy can be the very disciplines that reiterate a vertical, authoritarian experience and at the same time offers the possibility of emancipation, freedom, and justice." So my point is that language is a very important tool. And we have to use it well. And it's not always just for knowing something, in a definite way, but it's for learning and understanding in an ongoing way. So I will read a few more poems in that spirit. This next one is called "For Her Memory." My matrilineal robes are wool, hooked from skeins by two fat pins tapping their link dance, while intense calm and strength of mind reside in working eyes, nonchalantly passing down knowledge and ability to survive. The next one is called "They Were Young," and certainly goes out to my family. Calendar pages from a year that reads as a palindrome. A mother takes notes for a father away working out on boats. She's tending tasks here on earth, playing with their daughter, age 4, ethereal. Their son has just turned 7. He can read now, is often there, elsewhere. Saturday morning, mother finds a stillborn lamb in the barn, very cold when she comes across it, a twisted infant ram. Alice was pregnant, she wrote, and everyone going about their business as if nothing had happened. She had been raised with holy days, and these were them. Passover began that night on a full moon, and just as her aunt had done for her as a girl, she takes her daughter's straight hair, oft mistaken for hay by the livestock, and ties it in knots with strips of old cloth. During sleep, the daughter unrolls the rags to find each curl a petaled rose, all circling her round face. A wonderful, wonderful dream, she reports in the morning. And they begin a day of daffodils and painted eggs she is unaware of the belief behind. Her brother helps her search for sweets, unblinking at the idea a rabbit has hidden them. Father hears this through a long telephone line when he reaches the shore, having bobbed over mysteries for weeks. Mother attempting to relay the richness, noting with awe how their little ones help her see. So I'm going to read 2 poems now. These are the 2 COVID poems I have tonight. They're hopefully pretty painless, but the first one is called "No News I Breathe." I really only understand wind and tiny little gasps of things. Ends of boughs whip and bounce, white-petaled, living it out. It's way more than I can begin to comprehend, just them. And this next one it's written actually in a sonnet form. It's not in meter or anything, but It's called A Gale. A newspaper page lifts and falls on the table, a beckoning wisp, arm of a gray ghoul costume. It's the obituaries and million-dollar homes, revived by humid gusts. The windows closed to cracks after days of cold that made us all cough, everyone anxious. It's fear that tickles the intricate throat, the wet flesh at work keeping us in breath, when every death is a question past in asking. The cat curls on wool, extends a long paw, cleans each black pad. In a time of no closeness, it's us in the house. A safety that's light might blow away. It's coming in, the forlorn wind outside our door. So I wanted to just tie another thread between visual art and poetry. So you often hear an artist might have a visual language, or a writer has lovely imagery. But I just want to call into the room one last artist and writer that I really love, Agnes Dennis. And I got to see a retrospective of her work a year ago in New York City, right before everything closed down. And she puts into words really beautifully what I'm thinking, and also speaks to a shared experience that most of us have all been through this year. And then also what art and artists can do. So she says, the threads of existence have become so tightly interwoven that one pull in any direction can distort the whole fabric, affecting millions of threads. I believe that the new role of the artist is to create an art that is more than decoration, commodity, or political tool. It is an art that questions the endless contradictions we accept and approve of. It elicits and initiates thinking processes. My concern is with the creation of a language of perception that allows the flow of information along alien systems and disciplines, eliminating the boundaries of art in order to make new associations and valid analogies possible. So I just love that, and hopefully that's what I'm doing. And I'm just going to read a few more poems. These all have a little bit more to do with work, with my work, and what it feels like to labor through time. So this poem is called Sweet Greeting and Goodbye. My heartbeat shakes my t-shirt. The body bends my beliefs, surprises me, weaving between bees in the heat, giving each other gifts, blossoms for cucumbers. At all moments, I grieve. It's come again, time of climbing watermelon, humidity, felt oppression only cold water relieves. As it flees, only seasonality consoles me. What exists in my hinges is age, speaking aloud as I squat close to the ground, gathering, propelled to do so by that same force, rising at the time to plant seeds, to weed, extend my heart again, grieve. This is called A Warm Day is Fading. I left my door open and a moth flew in, seemingly with intention, seeming to be a friend. I paused in my work long enough to turn my head, glad to see the tiny mind between its set of wings, powdery, taupe, as if made from inconceivably light clay. I wondered at how, somehow, I continue to live in a way still remaining malleable. I am like time, built of sleeps and wakes, becoming weeks, from days, I am seasons. I run in upward circles, learning. So you seem to know I am awaiting you, my friend, whenever it is you arrive, my door open to your brief moment. I am busy, and somehow I am forever newly occupied. This next one is called We Both Grow. The world goes late, people are awake. I'm up not doing much and not doing much again in the morning, but sitting under this peach tree so that it's my hat, it seems. Svelte leaves drip downward, lime green whips grow up. There's one round peach in the crown, a model of hot color against the sky. I think there's no difference between me and this tree. Then I remember I'm supposed to find a husband, pay bills, work, and be fulfilled. The corners of my mouth pull taut, grim. Then a breeze in the tree reminds me of the immensity of what's mine, that lives are wild to live, yours is. And this is my last poem, and it's a short one. Thank you to my amazing audience. Woo! This last poem is called She's Doing Pretty Good. Time between items begins to soften. Flat shadows in all the room corners become cocoony and let dawn in. Orange light rises and rounds over the chimney and on. So much to do arrives with its subtle joy. Momentum has a flavor, her favorite. Thank you. Yay! Yay for poetry.
Thanks, Emma. Up next is going to be Craig DeMello. Craig DeMello is a writer and poet from New Bedford, Massachusetts. A lover of language, Craig teaches English by day at New Bedford High School and spends much of his free time reading and writing essays, short stories, poems, and songs. When he's not in the classroom or at his laptop, you can find him playing music at bars and restaurants all over the South Coast. Craig has recently released his third studio album, Strong Waters. He has also recently completed a collection of poetry called Finding the Bones, which he hopes to release in the coming months. There are other projects too, a book of essays, a collection of short stories, a novel, all in various phases of creation, which he hopes to tackle in 2021. Aside from his artistic endeavors, Craig is an avid chess player and runner. He lives in Acushnet with his wife and 2 children. For more information, you can check out his website, www.craigdemello.com, and that's with 1 L. All right, Craig, come on up.
Check 1. All right. How you doing out there on the street? So my name's Craig. I'm going to perform a few poems for you. I wanted to start with a piece that I wrote a few years back and performed it at the Zeitarian. It's about opioids, and it kind of got me started in spoken word poetry. So I figured I would do it here. It's called A Little Sympathy. Think about drug addict imagery. Perhaps you're picturing a miscreant nodding over in the streets. And we're quick to judge them critically because we think, how could somebody live their life so wickedly? And in a minute we decide we know their whole history. They went from sip and drink to a little weed to bigger things. So we hop up on a high horse and pass judgment with looks of disdain and disbelief. So one day you see your friend Tiffany, and she says, "Did you hear about Timothy? Well, yesterday he overdosed in a Jeep. He drove right off the road and he crashed and he hit a tree. But he's okay, because he was saved by Narcan that was administered by the EMT." Now, maybe it's because you lean one way politically, but you believe in free will and personal responsibility, so you think, are you kidding me? Don't they understand that Narcan is a scam from the pharmaceutical industry? If he wants to get high and die and commit suicide, we should just let him be. As far as I'm concerned, he's never going to learn. So the best thing to do would be to put him out of his misery, because he's a drug addict, a deadbeat, a loser. He's worthless, and he doesn't mean shit to me. Until one day, you have an injury, and you go to the doctor for the remedy, and you see the script, and you think, perfect, because you're absolutely certain addiction can never get to me. You start with 1 or 2 a day just to make it through the pain, not knowing that that's the recipe. And before long, you're not feeling very strong, because in addition to those, you need 2 or 3 to get to sleep. And then the scripts run out, and there's no doubt that you're going to find out all about withdrawal misery. You can't handle the pain physically, and mentally you think, I need the drugs, this is killing me. But these are not the kind of drugs that you can get for free. And then you discover that heroin is really cheap. Yes, friend, I heard around the bend that you can get the same high if you try that sniffing thing. And you think, okay, because there's no way that I would contemplate sticking a syringe into me. But I haven't been high in a week. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Can't be finicky. You were a prick, and now you're going to find out how dangerous a little prick can be. And now you're an addict, and your family, they're like you, they're a similar breed, so they just give you the big boot, like Italy. And you think, I don't need them, my family, or my friends. The only person that matters to me is the one that gets a fix to me. And these people that you used to count as the enemies are suddenly your new friends and colleagues in the streets. Until one day you have too much, and it's that Narcan that stops you from missing a beat. That's full circle, symmetry. And this can happen realistically, because addiction is a disease. And it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, a high school dropout, or if you have 6 degrees. And everybody knows somebody. There's no 6 degrees of separation between an untimely death or the penitentiary. Addiction is a disease because our brains work with chemicals intrinsically, and these drugs alter our brain chemistry. So if brains make choices hijacked by opioids, then tell me, are drug addicts really free? Sounds like they're sick to me, and they are sick because addiction is a disease. Now, what we can do about it is a mystery, but we can start with less judgment and more sympathy. Thank you. This is weird. I like it, though. So this summer, I wrote a couple pieces that I was thinking about turning into a series, but I stopped at 2, so we'll see how it goes. But anyway, this first one, it's Privilege, Part 1. Every day is summertime, and living is easy, especially when the life you're living is privilege, believe me. When I stare at the TV and see another kid hit by the PD, shot down before he went to the precinct. And Fox says last year he stole a few wallets. He didn't comply, he's too lawless. Then they praise the cops who shot him, acting like being executed by him in the streets is part of his due process. They scoff at white privilege as a concept. They tell me police murder is anomalous. What about Eric Garner and Walter Scott and them? Alton, Stefan, Freddie, Botham, Tatiana, George Floyd, and Breonna, Tamir, Philando, the Garners. Because some dishonorable cops have gone commando, it's bonkers. But when Dylan Roof emptied into the pews, the coppers took him in without a bruise and bought him a whopper. You wonder why they sing the blues? Pay attention. Because racism is living both sides of the Mason-Dixon. It pervades the system. And of course it's not all cops, just the cowards, because power punches downwards. That's ancient wisdom. Caucasian privilege starts in the things that we say to children. We don't have to tell them behave and listen or else they'll aim their weapons. And the data says we're less likely to get placed in detentions, less likely to have issues with our grades and attendance, less likely to get greater sentences for the same offenses, less likely to be fatherless and gravitate to henchmen, less likely to be labeled a menace or placed in a cage defenseless, incur a president's rage for protesting, less likely to be placed under arrest or tased, grabbed by the neck, or maced for a lack of respect, or labeled on a map with an X, redlining. We're more likely to be the ghetto designers and the gentrifiers and the testifiers. But a couple of questions that I have. Is it possible that life is possibly better for whites? Could it be that our nominal melanin might afford us a positive stereotype? I'm not saying life is easy, but an easier life is probable because being white is never an obstacle. Thank you. I'm out of breath. All right. So how you guys doing tonight? All right, so this is privilege part 2. Every day is summertime, and the living is easy, especially when the life you live in is privilege, believe me. Chef's kiss, la vida è molto bon, especially for those of us born with the Y chromosome. It's easy, like a Corvette driving an open road. But I got a daughter now, and every day she's getting older, so I think about this privilege, and it's hitting close to home. It's like for me, I don't have to be afraid when I walk home alone. And if I see a stranger, I don't pretend I'm on my phone. I don't walk with a key wedged between my knuckle bones. When I'm at the bar, I'm not constantly approached by clones and cheap cologne, giving me the cheese like provolone, offer to buy me a drink, and then seethe if I say no. I don't have to travel in packs to the bathroom when I go. Matter of fact, I don't have to watch how much I drink, care about what I wear, or wonder what people think. I can screw everybody, even the kitchen sink. Nobody would make a stink. Take my shirt off in public, nobody would even blink. Wardrobe malfunction, no conservative would spasm. There's no gaps in my wages or my orgasms. Even getting old is easy. Aging ain't that hard. Salt and pepper looks distinguished, and people love a dad bod. It's easier for us than it is for the sisters. Nobody says, hey, mister, why don't you look like this A-lister? Where are your ab pictures? Why don't you look like Brad Pitt or some other cat that's fit? I don't deal with that shit, but the fact is I'm only giving you half the picture. Sexism is so ingrained that you can find it in Scripture. That's the literal Genesis. You can trace it to the damn line where they blame a woman for the fall of all of mankind. Biblical misogyny, beyond belief. They praise virginity over honesty, tell women to dress modestly, no sex without apology, and if you're raped, you have to marry a rapist. It says so in Deuteronomy. And what about literature? The literary archetype, the hardened wife, the person who only wants to grow up and raise a child, and if they deviate, it's manic pixie dream girls and femme fatales. It's in our language. Bitch. We're used to it. The word hysterical comes from the Greek word for uterus. How long are we going to keep doing this? In some cultures, women were queens. They were revered. So how did we go from there to here? And I don't want you to think this is some woke bit of pandering, that I'm going to line up all the dudes and slander them. I'm just talking to my brothers. I want us to build a better world for our sisters and our mothers. And it's futile for me to think that I can change the world. I just want to make it a little better for my baby girl. Thank you. All right, I haven't been paying attention to the time at all. Hopefully somebody has. So I think I'm good, right? I can do a few more? Okay. So I put together a book of poetry that hopefully my good friend Nick LeBlanc is going to help me publish. It's called Finding the Bones, and if it's cool with you, I'm going to read a couple pieces from it. This one's called Spoons. I woke up holding my wife, stirred by the voices of my children who rise early and happy like every day of Christmas. We go downstairs and they eat cereal and watch cartoons. His spoon is blue, hers pink. I make the coffee, black for me, light and sweet for my wife, who circles the spoon slowly, half asleep. It's our summer morning ritual, cartoons and coffee. The day is slow and lazy, and we've nothing to do. These are my favorite. As silly noises escape the television accompanied by milky laughter from the kids, I get up, mug in hand, and take a familiar pose by the window. I look out at the world. Seems like a very dad thing to do, come to think of it. I notice a pile of dirt in the yard with a shovel in it. Perhaps I'll finish that today, perhaps not. Hours in the heat sail by as we swim and play games in the pool, tea parties, Marco Polo. I cook lunch on the grill. I play guitar in the shade. The promise of these days keeps me on the wheel during the endless winter months at work. In late afternoon, we go down the street to get ice cream. I laugh at how, despite his age, my son manages to get chocolate all over his face. My daughter prefers to eat hers with a spoon, then eat the cone last. At night, we read them books, and then they went to bed with no fuss. I fell asleep with my arm around my wife. It was as perfect a day as I can remember having. The next morning, I woke up early and the house slept. On the news, I read about a local woman, mother of 2, who overdosed the night before. While we were living, really living, she was dragging flames beneath a blackened spoon for the last time. Thank you. I think I'm going to call an audible here. So I started writing a poem recently, and this is like brand new, but why not? Anyway, so I wrote a poem about alcohol because I like alcohol. I'm currently on a 3-month hiatus away from it, but this is kind of a love-hate story about my journey with alcohol. Down the stairs slowly, gripping the rail, shoulder high, the music and smoke swirling. I'm there to say goodnight, and for a few moments I'm self-aware that I'm the novel bit of adorableness, good for hair tossing and play boxing before I saunter off to bed. The men there, my dad, his friends, pull from their cigarettes, the sharp incandescence. They sip brown liquid, all with eyes drooping slightly, laughing their booming roars over the rock and roll. I somehow understand the foreshadowing. I'm 11 at my cousin's house for a party around Christmas. We are machines of mischief, running around untethered, sharing and savoring dirty words like candy. The women sit in their own circle, drinking something that looks like coffee milk. They shoo us away when we ask for a sip. They know better than to start a fire by the woodpile. The men circle the bar like plotting robbers. Their jokes reverberate, the punchlines opaque. They sip from silver cans, the sour miasma. I can smell it from here. Subversive grin, ear to ear, we stand close. Dad, can I have a sip of beer? Sure, it's the holidays, Christmas cheer. The men laugh with a when I was your age smirk. We sip and gag, acidic swill, it was the worst. They laugh louder and say, trust us, you'll love it someday. I'm 16 at a friend's house the night of a school dance. We sit and split a 6 of Mike's Hard Lemonade, feeling the rush of wrongdoing. We tell jokes and laugh in a crude simulacrum of adult life. This is a movie we've seen before, and we all know our roles. I'm 18 at my first dorm room party. It's Halloween time. The stereo plays Thriller. I'm handed a cup, and it smells like vanilla. Rum and Coke, I'm told. Shortly after, I feel for the first time a pleasant lightheadedness. Words come easier. I'm all affability and charm, born again, baptized in poison with a new love on my arm. College was a blur. Went there to be a thinker, became a drinker, saw more stomachs pumped than guest speakers. It's a rite of passage. People expect you to empty glasses and be smashed as often as you attend classes. Some people did drugs. We did Rubinoff by the jug, $10 a gallon by the fridge on the rug. I drank a whole liter of Captain Morgan, was on the verge of alcohol poisoning, found myself on the floor of the bathroom face to the cold porcelain. I'd never thrown up before. My buddy George was there supporting, said, put your fingers down your throat, touch your punching bag like a clitoris. I laughed, but at work, I vomited in ocean. I never learned what was important, that this lust would never remain dormant. I would drink whatever I could afford, sneak beers in my guitar case up to the 3rd floor, played beer pong on a closet door, video games, kings, flip cup, and quarters. By senior year, we were known by name at the liquor store. Most people drank to get drunk, but I developed a real taste for it. In my 20s, it was IPAs, a beer snob condescension, Hefeweizens, floral notes, full-bodied and other pretensions. Lagers, ales, and porters became sure of myself. My taste refined. Later developed a palate for whiskey and wine. Built a whole persona around the form. A whiskey poet, drank at every show. A piss artist, drunk performer. I could tell different brands of whiskey by the smell. Had a flask in my glove box for vocal emergencies, Irish coffees on road trips, road sodas, one for the road, never leave a soldier, finish your drink before we go. Beers in the back in the parking lot, we called them trunkies. Looking back, my behavior indiscernible from a junkie's. Drove home often when I was a few to the bad. I'm lucky I never crashed, I'm still ashamed. Looking back, I'm not surprised. Alcohol is more American than baseball or apple pie. Society encourages the abusive usage. We love our open bars and our all-inclusives. Concerts are only half about the music. We love tailgating. All events are excuses for us to start boozing. I'm not judging. I loved it. Made certain behaviors acceptable in public. A couple drinks later, it's like, fuck it. See a good friend, you can hug him, tell him you love him. It was liquid courage. It would encourage new discursive words and verbs to rise to the surface. I didn't have to be perfect. See that pretty girl? Take a chance. It'll be worth it. But of course, too much would bring out the serpent. Maybe you shouldn't be furious that the jukebox isn't working. Another shot, blackout, curtains. I do miss it every day. I would drink alone some of the happiest glasses I ever drained, listening to the music play with a scotch or a Cabernet, warm me spread through my veins. I miss it. It's like an old lover. I feel it like a phantom limb. I fear it like a nightmare. And if we never reconcile, it'll be part of me until the end. Thank you. I think we're good, yeah. So my name's Craig DeMello, and I'm going to kick this over to the person who's up next. And I want to thank Nick for having me. This has been a blast.
Good evening, New Bedford. My name is Sarah Mulvey. I am here because I have the honor to introduce you to our next poet. Mr. Nick LeBlanc is a writer, artist, and public school educator from New Bedford, Mass. He is the founder and editor, of Domesticated Primate, an independent publishing entity based here in New Bedford. He's also the president of the Performing Arts Collectives Board. He has just finished his first full-length novel and is in the process of querying and workshopping. He believes in the abolishment of private property and that human lives are worth more than individual profit. You can find him on Instagram at Nick D. LeBlanc and at Dom Prim Pub. The images you will see during his set tonight were photographed and curated by Brandon Cabral.
Thank you, Sarah, and thanks to everybody out there and at home. My name's Nick. I wanted to repeat what Sarah said, that the images you're going to see as I'm speaking behind me are from a photographer named Brandon Cabral. You can find his work on Instagram at Cabralism and at his website. So the first piece I want to read for you tonight is called "In the Garden Where My Love Is, That Is Where I Built a Well." In the garden where my love is, that is where I've built a well. Lie down in the light and let the sun heal you, boy. The trouble on your mind is as heavy as the air we breathe. The tightening of your throat is not a threat. So where's the smile, boy? It's a new world. You're the hangover. A rare breeze sends an unopened envelope skittering across a steaming concrete desert into the protection of a long shadow cast by a concrete temple erected in the name of a dying god. The recipient of the envelope has gone. His debt remains unpaid. The sun is punishing. If left outside for too long, the soles of my shoes will melt to the pavement. My skin sticks to my shirt. The pores on my face hang open, awaiting my next step, preparing to expel the salty reminder of my impermanence. I have come to buy poison. I am surrounded by brainless metal hulks, all with varying degrees of awareness. Some of their operators remain inside of them, delaying their journey out into the harsh sunlight. Their faces radiate in unaffected peace. Their encasements growling and humming a deep mechanical bellow. It must be their day off too. I approach the temple. Inside, metallic supports stretch higher than the clouds. the shelving cluttered with all imaginable wares. Giant screens wider than the widest building, taller than the tallest mountain, cast the abstracted figurative shadows of deformed demagogues onto the lacquered concrete floors, their image all teeth and tongues and lips. The worshippers of the dying god mingle with the indentured servants. They've been tasked with the same duties. They wear the same heraldic vestments. They speak the same technical language. Some have been granted the illusion of volition. These tend to be the faithful, their garments further decorated with all decrees and manner of dogmatic imagery. They believe this makes them a valuable resource to their God. But the servants understand what the faithful do not, that forced participation in a system leaves no room for worship, only for self-delusion, and that value is all relative when the alternative is extinction. In this moment, I am the terrorist, because I know that God is dying, and I do not care. I welcome it. But today, I need their poison. When faced with an atrocity, one becomes an arbiter. Intellectualize passivity, rename it transcendence, and partake in the fallacy that altruism can be a byproduct of my faith in worship and a self-extinguishing system. Or frankly, commit suicide by any other name. How does one really define exploitation anyway? I once heard a story about a man who survived the Nagasaki nuclear bombing. He had been playing soccer with some friends when the ball had been kicked into a nearby construction ditch. He was the unlucky one who had to climb down 20 feet or so to retrieve it. Just as he had gotten to the bottom of the ditch, the bomb was dropped. He was knocked out cold from the force of the blast. He received third-degree burns in his entire body. When he came up from the ditch, his friends with whom he'd been playing soccer had been reduced to smoking piles of human waste. He was the only living person in a 1-mile radius, purely by chance. He suffered through many psychological and health problems for the remainder of his life, dying an early death caused by lymphoma, cancer. His body ate itself. As devastating as the heat from the blast was, and as devastating as the force from the explosion might have been, by far the deadliest side effect of that bomb was the fallout. It wasn't the blast that killed him. It wasn't the skin melting from his body. It was the fallout. The fallout killed him. The fallout caused his body to want to eat itself to death. An emergency medical technician receives a call. It's a drug overdose. He arrives on the scene to find a 5-foot-tall man with bulging eyes lying on a street corner, his skin turning blue. The EMT notices the man's left arm is swollen. There's an open wound on his cubital fossa, the crease in the arm, where the forearm meets the bicep. The skin around it is ragged and torn, the color of a rotting plum. His partner retrieves the Narcan, administering it. The EMT scans the man again. "I think I know this guy," he says aloud, handing his partner a second hit of the Narcan. He disappears into memory. He remembers high school. He remembers a short kid running through the halls. He remembers a weird kid making noises in class. He remembers a kid with bulgy eyes. He's in 8th grade woodshop, watching the kid chew on a pencil. He's in 7th grade home economics, making fun of the kid with his brother. He's sitting next to the kid in computer class. There's a substitute teacher. The short kid with bulgy eyes and a weird voice is sitting next to him in computer class, and there's a substitute teacher. The short kid with bulgy eyes and a weird voice who makes strange noises and runs through the hallways is sitting next to him in computer class with a substitute teacher when that kid hands him something. The short kid with the bulgy eyes and a weird voice who makes strange noises and runs through the hallways that everyone makes fun of and calls a crack baby is sitting next to him in computer class with a substitute teacher when he hands him something. The kid hands him something. The kid hands him something from his bag. The kid hands him something from his lunch bag. He looks down and sees what the kid with the bulgy eyes that freaks everyone out has just handed him a piece of beef jerky. "Here," says the ugly kid with the bulgy eyes and a weird voice that no one likes. Try some of this. It's my favorite snack. The ugly kid smiles. The kid no one likes smiles. The kid everyone is freaked out by smiles. The crack baby smiles. The EMT remembers all this while sirens and lights flash behind him. There's nothing more to say. What if I told you that I have a gun strapped to my ankle? That at any moment I could reach down to my ankle and murder every single one of you? Maybe I'm a crazy guy making up sad stories, standing at the corner of a building, just waiting to fulfill my fantasies of rage. How do you know what this paper really says? What if I told you I've been planning this for weeks? What do you really know about me? Are you scared yet? Are you uncomfortably shifting in your seat? Are you nervously checking my lower leg for signs of a weapon? What if I told you that we, as in you and I, are fallout? Dangerous, cancer-causing waste created in the mass wake of a huge explosion. What if I told you that you are the EMT and I am the kid that no one likes who overdosed and died? What if we're both the Japanese man whose skin was burned off? Or maybe we're really more like his friends. What if the imaginary gun I just taunted you with is really my words? And what if that gun is really pointed at my temple instead of yours? And you are the ones with the fingers on the trigger. And the bullets are the fallout of my words. Maybe it's conjecture, but as far as I can tell, we're all together stuck here, whether it's heaven, whether it's hell. So given will to power, or will to strength, or will to dwell on scary things like nukes and death and weapons hidden on myself, or the nature of a business to consume, not to compel, or of death by self-destruction, a confusing parallel. I'll tell you all a secret. I keep tied to my lapel. That stops depression from engulfing and keeps my thirst for purpose quelled. It keeps my weakened heart pumping and reminds me to retell that perseverance is a virtue which one cannot oversell. So here's the truth, just what I have done to not be overwhelmed. In the garden where my love is, that is where I've built a well. In the garden where my love is, that is where I've built a well. Thank you. This next piece is called Hamilton Street. Lying on freshly cut grass with her best friend, the roots of a tree as their pillow, two runaways, silent, content, ants crawling in their hair. They follow the moon as it creeps around the sky, hiding behind tree branches, reflecting the southern sun's cold light. They'll stay here forever, their fingers knotted, impenetrable. She and her best friend lay and count the stars until a mist broke the humidity and the mosquitoes came out. 2 months later, her best friend was in a coma. His brain had swelled, caused by a blood-borne illness transmitted by mosquitoes. Her father's old Buick, long like a speedboat, puts around corners and sputters down streets slowly. A cigar mashed in between the forefinger and middle finger of his right hand, clasped around the steering wheel, left elbow sticking out of the driver's side window, his substantial weight resting on it, feeling the wind lick his face as a cherry-sweet smoke tickles his nostrils. He scans the streets, squints to see behind bushes, craning his neck to look over fences and behind rock walls. He remembers a time when he ran away on a night much like this, ducking out of his window, riding his bike down to Hamilton Street, where he met his friends, Kevin with the lisp, Marty with the crew cut, and Andy with the cherry bomb. They lit it with matches stolen from Andy's mother's kitchen, put it in a mailbox, and watched the back of it blow off, slinging through the air like a ninja star from one of those kung fu movies that his brother would watch. They hid behind trees and bushes for the whole night and returned to their houses covered in bug bites by sunrise. No one even noticed they were gone. Thank you. So, this next one here was inspired by a quote from one of my favorite books. I'm not going to tell you the book, and that'll be your homework for today. The golden-haired lilac queen, dancing. The golden-haired lilac queen, dancing, barefoot, impetuous, grass trapped between her toes, her knees painted with mud, golden straw crackling and bowing in the breeze, bound with twine and leaning on a doddering barn door painted a fading cherry. Upstairs, the floorboards creak, a housefly on a torn window screen, boots kicked off, tossed clumsily at the bedside, swollen feet propped on a pillow, arms folded behind his head, the sweet smell of lilac. He falls asleep. Blood on the walls of the slaughterhouse, wiped away by buckets of well water, iron on iron on iron on iron. The husks of dried gooseberries crumbling, stained hands reeking with their sweet stench, an empty silo, the flapping of a bat's wing echoes, the ground littered with the decaying carcasses of dead field mice, a rusted weather vane squeaking. Hiding between bands of reaped grain, she sits cross-legged, picking tiny chips of paint off the western face of her family's moldering barn. Reminded of church, she rests them on her tongue like the preacher had done. Reminded of family, she swallows without chewing like Grandma had done. Reminded of God, she touches her fingers from head to heart. Reminded of Jesus, she touches her fingers from shoulder to shoulder. And the golden-haired lilac queen dances, her partner a fallen leaf, tumbling in the breeze. Thank you. Got a couple long ones for you, kind of like that first one. This first one of the couple long ones I'm going to read, I was actually inspired to write by our very own poet laureate, Patricia Gomes. Patricia Gomes writes a lot about New Bedford. And I'm from New Bedford, as she is and as many of you guys are. And I don't write a lot specifically about New Bedford. Maybe in images, maybe in bits and pieces, but it's rare for me to have a full piece that's dedicated to what it means to be from here for me. And this piece is one of those pieces where I write specifically about this weird city. It's called A Goblin Smiles, a Zombie Follows. A goblin smiles at me as I walk by. It's a closed-mouth smile, pulled from the cheeks. Her philtrum collapses inward, resting against her toothless gums. Her eyes are kind, twinkling in the late morning sun, sitting on the two-staired stoop of a Portuguese sports cafe. Smoking a cigarette, she wants me to greet her, to smile without judgment and to be polite. I worry she'll curse me if I don't. Nice day, isn't it? How's about that weather? She's wearing khaki shorts that cut creases into her flabby thighs. I nod my head and continue past. The effluvious perfume of cheap late morning beers and chemical-drenched tobacco ambushes my nostrils. I've never been here before. A narco-zombie shuffles a few paces behind me. His hood falls from his balding head as he passes by the seated goblin. She smiles at him as well. I fumble for the knife in my pocket, dragging my thumb over the release, reminding myself it's still there. My pace quickens unconsciously. Like I said, I've never been here before, okay? I am a young woman braving the distance from the gentrified commerce district of a small New England city through the neighborhood of state-subsidized apartment buildings, mostly occupied by immigrants and fourth-generation welfare families, to my rented house by the beach. What is home? I am a transgender college student eating a vegetarian hummus wrap in a small cafe, a building which 60 years ago was owned by a Cape Verdean cobbler who specialized in repairing longshoreman boots. What is home? I am a young man stomping through an antique outlet in search of valuable vinyl records, tearing through piles of forgotten family heirlooms, putting my foot through a family portrait taken in the city hall that someone's great-great-grandfather had used his savings to pay for. What is home? The narco-zombie stumbles as he steps down from the curb, his frayed leather boots splashing in a small puddle of runoff, swirling with rainbows of motor oil and antifreeze at the side of the road. I pass by an abuela entering a bakery, her hair's covered in a purple-patterned kerchief. A bell bangs against the bakery's glass door. A woman behind the counter greets her, "Hi, Auntie," and hands her a plastic bag full of freshly baked buns. I recall once walking into a bar with my friends in our hometown. We'd never been to this bar before. We were the youngest people in there by at least 15 years, and we walked with the type of immature and ignorant confidence that the other patrons had long since lost. I ordered a beer in a frozen mug. It doesn't matter what kind. Any beer is good in a frozen mug. My friends sat to the left of me. While they engaged with one of the younger bartenders, and by young I mean early 40s, I sat scanning the room. I watched two older gentlemen by the corner of the bar drinking the same beers they drank every day and staring at a small television above the bar that continuously ran $1 Keno games. I saw a woman and a man, a couple holding hands, sitting by a lottery ticket machine and watching a group of men with oil on their bare arms, or maybe it was dirt, as they played pool. An old man with tobacco-stained beard sat a few seats down from me to the right and quietly stared into his mug. I too looked down into my beer, watching the tiny bubbles rise to the surface and pop, seeing the floating islands of sud collide with the frozen edges of the glass, sending tiny chunks of ice down into the beverage. I looked up, finding the older bartender, and by older I mean late 40s, staring back at me. "You ain't from around here, are you?" What is home? At the waterfront, I stand atop a wall made of rock, put together by the Army Corps of Engineers sometime after the Second Great War. Its purpose is to hold back the tide when the waters rise and attempt to destroy us. I stand on this wall and look at the city. I see the lead paint peeling from a triple-decker behind a soft-serve ice cream shop. I feel the coastal breeze wick the sweat from my back. I see more narco-zombies pour out of a red brick building, an old textile mill converted to a treatment center in the 1980s. I see a pair of teenagers walking by the roadside. They've skipped school and are in love. I see neighborhoods full of people, some hiding in small apartments, others braving the sly existential danger of those 200-year-old cobblestone streets. What I don't see is an empty space that shares my shape, an empty space in which I perfectly fit, the space that I fill, the space in which I belong. What is home? Is it where you're born? Is it where you end up? Is it where your imperialist ancestors decided to land? Is it where your slave ancestors were dropped off and abused? Is it where you were raised? Is it where you were educated? Is it where you woke up today, or where you may end up tomorrow? Is it nowhere? Are you wandering? What are you looking for? What do you need to hear? Are you scared? Why are you so scared? Because you're alone, and you're walking, and you're confused, and you're surrounded by goblins and zombies and sadness, and you can't find a place you fit in, and you don't want to be a gentrifier, but you don't want to be the gentrified. You can feel the weight of history, and you're time traveling, and you can see the future, and you don't belong here. What is home? You'll have to excuse my behavior. I'm rambling. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Like I said, I've never been here before. Would you join me downtown for a cocktail and some noshing? Nothing else a man more pleases than a ripened pear and some fine aged cheeses. Thank you. So I've got one more, and then I'm going to bring up Rayana. Actually, I'm going to ask that Sarah brings out the bio paper that has Rayana's bio on it for me. I believe I left it back there. So I'll read this last one, and I'll bring up our next person. This last one is called Complicit. I lost it today, my innocence, Pebbles squirm under the tire's weight. My forehead presses against the cold glass of a rear passenger window, the wind chill too low to justify cracking it open. I want to inhale the salty breeze of the coast, but I settle for the stuffy, stale heat of the car's climate control. I trace outlines into the stars with my eyes. Squinting harder, I think I can see the twinkling blanket of the Milky Way. Or maybe it's a side effect of my retinas detaching. Maybe it's that halo, or in those stars. My innocence. Have you seen it? Because I no longer have it. Maybe it's stuck in the dirt on a farm in the Midwest, just south of the quarter-mile vat full of bovine and swine shit, steadily releasing greenhouse gases into the air. Maybe it's hiding underneath a pile of rubble somewhere in Western Asia, covered in the blood of a 9-year-old who just watched his little brother get crushed by a falling ceiling beam. Maybe it's tucked away in the corner of the bursar's office of an elite private college in New England, underneath a poster designed by the Key Club which reads, "Men and Women for Others," and features 2 young, attractive white men playing wiffle ball with a group of small black and brown boys wearing mismatched uniforms. Maybe it's in the footnote of an unread book cited by one pseudo-intellectual to another pseudo-intellectual at a party they both feel too hip to attend, but came to anyway, hoping to meet someone they can exchange fluids with, so just maybe they can feel less alone, but just as cool and aware and conscious and cool and aware. Maybe it went down the drain in my kitchen sink with the water I kept running while washing dishes with environmentally unfriendly detergent. Maybe it was attached to the bullets that burst through the chest cavity of a death row inmate in Utah and stuck to the back of a wooden chair held together by black metal brackets built by the dead man and his fellow inmates 3 years earlier. Maybe it's with the processed chicken gnashed between the teeth of a pre-diabetic 6th grader. The state paid for his lunch. Can I tell you something? I'm a hypocrite. I'm a hypocrite. I'm a hypocrite. That feels good. Let me say it again. I am a hypocrite. I am complicit. Are you sure you don't have it? My innocence? Is it floating into the atmosphere with the exhaust of the idling car in which I sit and reflect? Was it ever there? Am I a sellout? I'm a sellout. I've sold out. I'm complicit. Oh, despair. Where can we find faith in a world so hopeless? Was my innocence a lie? A delusion? A pacifier? Or is this suffering just destiny for a non-believer forced to reckon with the eternal silence of an ambivalent God? Maybe that's where it was hiding, my innocence, in the silence. Thank you. Thank you, guys. As Sarah had said, my name is Nick. I run a little publishing entity that's getting back on its feet after some mismanagement. We're called Domesticated Primate. We work closely with an organization called Anomaly Poetry, which Sarah runs and has founded. And we do events like this on a smaller scale at other places throughout the city, and we publish people's books fairly frequently. If you guys are ever interested in that, you can find some information about us in some of the links that have been posted underneath this live stream, or you could find me on social media and ask me about it. We encourage everybody to write. We encourage everybody to express themselves. A lot of people are wannabe writers. They'll say on their Instagram profile, "I'm a writer, I'm an author," but they very rarely sit down and do it. Same thing goes for photographers, same thing goes for readers. With Domesticated Primate, one of my hopes is to encourage those people to stay true to what they say they are and do some of the work and put it out there. We're here to listen and we're here to help, so step up and do your part. The next reader I'd like to bring up, her name is Rayana Grace. Rayana Grace is a lifelong New Bedford resident. In 2013, she graduated from Boston College with a degree in sociology and African diaspora studies. Upon graduating from college, she entered the nonprofit sphere working in family support, youth development, and arts and culture. She was recently named program officer at the Eyssallenne Foundation, managing their women and girls in New Bedford portfolios. In this role, Grace supports nonprofit organizations addressing root causes of inequality for women and girls in the United States, and that promote progressive social change and combat discrimination in all its forms in New Bedford. As an activist and supporter of progressive social change, her poetry reflects her experiences as a Black woman and is often centered on race, womanism, and culture. Just as you saw with my set, Rayana's images were also photographed and curated by Brandon Cabral, who you can find on Instagram @Cabralism. Rayana, come on up, and thank you guys for listening.
Great. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rayana Grace. I live in New Bedford, and I do spoken word poetry. I'm grateful to Nick for inviting me here tonight because it's actually been a long while since I've written and performed, and having this opportunity spurred me to write a new piece, which is hot off the press. Just finished it yesterday as the procrastinator that I am, so I will be sharing that piece with you last. But before I get started, I think it's imperative to mention that we are living on Wampanoag land and acknowledging the Indigenous people who lived here before us and continue to live here. In writing about my experiences as a woman, as a person of color, I think it's very important to acknowledge the land that we are on. And so I appreciate having the time here, but wanted to start with that message. I have 4 pieces to share with you today. 2 of them are about womanhood and womanism, and 2 of them are about my culture. This first piece that I'm going to share, it was my first published piece. I will have to warn that it does have some profanity. This piece is called Twitterly Dumb, and the beginning of each verse is taken from a tweet or a Facebook post that I saw a man make. That was definitely very sexist or misogynistic, and so if I put the quotes, it was words that I saw on social media, and so, and then the repetitiveness of the B word is really just representative of how normalized I feel the B word has been when men are referring to women. So this first piece is called Twitterly Dumb. When a guy doesn't address a girl by bitch or slut, it shows he cares a lot about her. Crazy, because he probably thinks there's something hot about her. Thin waist, big boobs, can't forget what's there behind her. Sex more, talk less. Then I think he wouldn't mind her. Because you didn't call me a word that's used as disrespectful and harming, I'm supposed to look at you like you're the new Prince Charming. But what scares me is that's how a lot of people feel. Throwing words around like a frisbee, it's hard to believe it's real. Tossed from one to another, weightless like it had no importance, acting like it'd be her honor just to give her one chance. Better hurry up like it'll be her only chance, giving her that, wouldn't you rather be with me than be left lonely chance? You'd rather make her strip her clothes, but not for tips because she's not a hoe, except you think it's up to you when she stops and when she goes. Prevent her from reaching the top, just keep knocking her down below. But did it ever once cross your mind that instead of placing her value as a dime, you should be paying pennies for her thoughts, though your 2 cents couldn't get you what you thought you could have bought? Because the way that these guys be making statements, they be lucky if they can even afford to make a down payment. SMH, I effing hate bitches, can't live without them though. Oh, so that's what you wrote in that card for your mom. You know, the bitch that rocked you in her arms when you cried and held a funeral for your pet goldfish the day that it died and encouraged you that anything was possible as long as you tried. So that's the one you hate but can't live without, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to be that I'm right. Is it right that a woman and a bitch are the same? But what's it mean to be a bitch? Is it more than just a name? Is she a bitch when she calls you out for being disrespectful or just plain lame? Or let me guess, when she doesn't respond to you spitting your game, or she's not willing to just be another passive piece in your game of life, distinguishing what makes a girl a side chick compared to a future wife. Big ass booty and no face, not wifey material, very smashable though. So she should be smashed if her dress is too tight, but it's only too tight if it slows you from sliding your hand up her thigh that night, right? Just look past her face, her eyes, her smile, and who cares about her mind? Her knowledge is worthless compared to her behind. And personality doesn't matter. Why look for what you don't care to find? Being deemed worthy of wife material, that's what every girl dreams of. Having a cute face is all it takes to win a man's love. Who created this rating scale to begin with? What makes her body a 10 and her face just a 6? Getting less points for a body than her face, and why do we adhere to these standards men placed? Is this skewed IQ test the best way to measure one's beauty or her booty? Because either way, it's pretty messed up that our bodies are subjected to such objective views, but who's going to challenge a society that's skewed when the status quo reaffirms that it's the right thing to do? Birth control, the second best thing a woman can put in her mouth to avoid pregnancy. I bet the man who came up with that one thought he was real clever, didn't he? Girls can open up their mouth, but not to speak against oppression, right? A girl can go home with you, but he needs to know it's only for one night. You see, a good woman is a mannequin, does anything for her man again. Perfect body, clothes, and looks to be observed, but completely incapable of formulating words. Men would rather us be hushed, dolled up with lipstick and blush, keep our lips zipped, but unzip his pants so he gets the chance to score on your field. But then the deal is cut off if he makes you a mother, because even though he was trying to call you baby, you know he wasn't ready at all for your baby. And it's crazy that while women are the providers of the world, we can all be diminished by a single word, and a number can be placed on our looks, and men would rather see us with a big butt than a big book, and we're supposed to be sexy, but not too sexy. Everything we do is a test. He has the ability to control how we view ourselves in the mirror. Let us use our eyes to make it all clearer. We as women need not conform to the societal norms. We need to plant the idea in the heads of young girls that her beauty is a multifaceted diamond that is neither defined nor confined by the boundaries set by men. Our excellence is a gift that few are blessed enough to witness. Brick by brick, we'll demolish these superficial walls as sisters and show that our bond goes beyond our favorable assets and assess that there is no number in this world that can hold the value of our women and girls. Thank you. This next piece is called Belong, and it's about the sense of feeling part of the African diaspora no matter where you are in the world. I'm not sure how many people are familiar, but in 2019 was a big coming home where many Africans from throughout the diaspora all around the world went back to Ghana. And especially for African Americans, it's hard to trace back where our culture or ethnicity came from because of slavery. But in 2019, Ghana welcomed everyone back home. And so this poem, Belong, is about that sense of belonging, even though we might not know where we came from. You belong. It rolled sweetly off his lips like a song that I had never heard, but it already sounded familiar, like the words had always been there, but listening to them together so melodically felt like they were resonating deep inside of me. But now I could hold them. As I heard them, I wanted to keep them and record them, add them to my collection and store them, since I was told I belong. I was told to find my roots, so I looked at my grandfather's face. Each wrinkle was so graceful, full of graces. I could see that my family tree had roots that connected me to the motherland, followed the roots and lines in my mother's hand that I had clasped so tight, hoping that she might help me find my path. But I realized it was me who had to take that step at last. The homeland, the host land, the which you like most land, choosing between separatism or being part of the Pan-Africanist, wondering if my Africanness was authentic enough, wondering if it's possible for this to be part of one voice, one dream, one love, one need. The choice was hard to see. At first, finding the gift within the curse, but the present I was presenting with of being part of a greater thing, a global society of sisters and brothers, all related by the land of our mother, regardless of whether we move or we stay, you can always be connected along the way. See, we were scattered like seeds, not like rocks too heavy in the heart and stay where we were put in the dirt, but seeds are meant to grow and change and bring life to the earth. And sometimes our roots keep us anchored and strong, but we're able to blossom and keep moving along. You belong. It rolled sweetly off her lips like a song that I had never heard, but it already sounded familiar, but I could hear it from my family tree as the wind made our leaves whisper. So I know even if I leave my sister or my uncle travels across the ocean, and the motion brings seasickness that brings about homesickness, the cure is something that we can all find within us. by remembering the words that remain all life long. If you listen closely, you will hear you belong. Thank you. And I know that Nick gave him a shout out, but I just want to again acknowledge Brandon Cabral, who is my cousin, part of my family tree, part of my culture. The images that you see projected behind me are all part of his work. And when I told him that a lot of my pieces were about womanhood, were about Black women, Cape Verdean women, he curated an awesome gallery to share tonight. So super proud of Brandon. And again, I thank him for his art. I really wanted to make sure that a Black artist's work was displayed behind me while I performed. So thank you to Brandon. This next piece I wrote 2 years ago for an exhibit at the Whaling Museum. They had done a call for art from Cape Verdean artists, and it ended up being an amazing exhibit full of mixed media art. We had people who made textiles, clothing, different types of paintings, photography, sketches. It was an amazing exhibit with such a high turnout that it went from being a small exhibit to lasting through the entire summer. Anyone who's watching who's Cape Verdean knows that we show out for our people. So the opening went from, I think they expected a couple dozen, and it was over 250 people just on that opening night. And it was such an honor to be surrounded by so many talented artists and to have my work hanging in a museum. So I thank Akia, who is the curator there, who helped to make that show possible. And so this piece is called Biting My Mother's Tongue, which talks about the mother tongue, which is the language of my mother's land in Cape Verde, and the fact that I don't know how to speak Criollo, so biting my tongue, feeling like I'm tripping over my words. But I am happy to share that since writing this, I did enroll in Criollo classes and am learning. So who knows, maybe a future poem will be in my mother tongue. But for now, I'm still practicing. And so this piece is called Biting My Mother's Tongue. I've always wished that my words could flow off my tongue, soft as the sands of the islands, instead of fumbling, stumbling through a pronunciation that's foreign, but still my land. I know it should feel like home, giving me a sense of saudade for a place I've never known. The jagged edges of my words feel more like Fogu's rocks than the sand, but I'm forever connected to Mother Africa, interlacing her fingers with my hand. I feel such a deep connection to a land I've never been, but feeling authentic is the struggle that's within. I wish my mom had learned the words that her mother spoke with ease, instead of shortened bits and pieces that just feel like a tease. I yearn to be able to respond to an elder with a symphonic ebbs and flows, rather than my half smile, shoulder shrug, and a muted, I don't know. I want to untie my mother's tongue and instead weave my own words, be able to teach my children the words that she could never teach hers. Because I don't say mama or even my and papa or even pai, and sometimes I have to stop and think about the sound that an X should make. I get better every time I try. But I know there's Criollo within my soul. Ooh, the curls of my hair react with the breeze in the air when I'm by the ocean's water, connecting me to the land of my mother and father. My hips move to the third beat of a drum without a second thought. I'll sway and hum and feel the island's rhythm align down my spine. My tenacity is passed down from a long line of strong Cape Verdean women who stood firm in their word, ensured their voices were heard. I stand proudly on the shoulders of giants who, despite challenges and setbacks, refuse to be silenced. My courage is not an accident, but rather the manifestation of my ancestors' prayers for me. The cultural continuity has a home within my soul, and my aura warmly glows like the sun rising over Santiago. I feel Cabo Verde emanate from inside me. There is no other way to describe me. Reclaiming the language of my ancestors is a piece of my story. How can I write the ending without a preface? It's something that makes me worry because Black folk were so often forbidden from speaking their mother tongue. The sense of needing to blend in is ingrained from when we're young. I've seen my grandmother's name on the census, and while her skin was tan and her name was Gomes and her mother was from São Nicolau and proclaimed it as her home, she was labeled white, not Black or Negro, or even the term of the time mulatto. Now, I don't know if that's because she was trying to prevent discrimination or if it was part of the government's forced assimilation, but regardless of the twisted reason, it helps fuel my sense of why I feel the need to re-seize my culture. As I climb the ladder of liberation to becoming my full self, I declare this coming home journey my own celebration, because that cultural richness is wealth. As I pull myself up, each foreign word becomes the norm. My melodic Criollo will be a tranquil mist instead of a frightful storm. I'll ascend this ladder rung by rung and embrace the release of pressure from biting my mother's tongue. Thank you. And this is my last piece. Like I said, my most recent piece, I just finished it this week. And I was inspired by just a lot of things that women face and just the words that we hear and the dichotomy of how we're treated versus men, how a woman can be called the B word or looked at in a mean way for doing something, standing up for herself or being courageous, being assertive. And so this piece is called Intimidated. And before I begin, I want to acknowledge that my use of the term woman is wholly inclusive and that I support my LGBTQIA community, Indigenous women, poor women, women that aren't deemed conventionally attractive, disabled women, and all. More than once in my life, I've been told that I'm intimidating. Not scary or threatening or like the type to be instigating. I've always thought it was a weird way to acknowledge the confidence I'm radiating. Unique, make my own choices, not the type to be imitating. I stepped into my own and embraced my favorite parts of me. My sarcasm and my quick mouth passed down from both sides. The curves of my belly shaped by cachupa, pork chops, and fish fries. My need to ask questions, who, what, and where, pulled away from the need to straighten and rock the natural curls of my hair. I'm proud that my shoulders bear the messages of the women that came before me. No longer weighed down, but I'm feeling weightless. I'm not rushing to that next great thing, living in the present so I have to wait less. Not tripping on the past because now I walk with a stride that exudes the pride of my mom and my nana and my aunties times 10, my great aunts, my fake aunts, my sister, my friends. For any woman who's ever felt the need to shrug their shoulders, cross their legs, bite their tongue, pull back their hair into an acceptable bun, let others take their words and pose them as their own. To work, serve, provide, lead, all while taking care of their home. For the woman ignored while the man next to them is praised. For those who nod and smile while experiencing rage. Whose singing bird is caged. Who is counting down the days. Counting down the days. I took this underhanded compliment and flipped it on its head, no longer taking it as an insult, but I'm filled with pride instead. For the woman also called intimidating, who have been assigned the number 2. Too loud, too proud, too in your face, taking up too much space, too cocky, too smart, too much leading with your heart, too big, too mean, too often taking the lead. For those women who have been told to smile by a random man on the street, for those who have been touched on the small of your back by a stranger trying to creep, for those who have been forced to see your sisters as your opposer, for those whose victories have been ripped away as you try to get closer, for my fellow women who are intimidators, swing that truth like a mighty sword, reflect the quality back like a mirror, and reclaim the new meaning of the word. Thank you. So again, I appreciate you listening tonight. I'm so grateful to Nick, Beatrice, and Dawn for putting this together. It's been an awesome series, and I know that they have a few more things in store. So really excited for the rest of the night to hear my fellow poets, and I hope you all stay safe and have fun. Take care.
Thank you, Rayana. Up next, I have the pleasure of bringing up Sarah Jane Mulvey. Sarah Jane Mulvey is a bedroom poet from New Bedford, Mass. She is overly enthusiastic about her day job in the nonprofit arts world and karaoke. Her poetry is fueled by family, feminism, and early 2000s pop punk. She is a founding member of Anomaly Poetry and a co-host of their monthly open mic night. She also works closely with Domesticated Primate to publish the work of the exceptional and unusual of New Bedford's creative community. She is currently published in Domesticated Primates seasonal anthologies, Rituals and Tidings, and is still working up the courage to submit a full collection of poems. Follow along on Instagram with @SarahMulves and @AnomalyPoetry. So up next for us, please welcome Sarah Jane Mulvey.
Good evening, New Bedford. As Nick said, I'm Sarah Jane Mulvey. I'm going to read a few poems for you tonight. Okay. I was here the first week, and I'm so happy to be back. Thanks for joining us again. Hi, everybody outside. Hi, everybody at home. All right. So, my first poem is titled An Ode to Ariana Grande. Oh, sorry. They taught us modesty is a virtue. Cover up, because if they see the way sunlight shines on your unashamed skin, there would be no need for gilded churches. Holy shines out from you, luminous and lush. How can we be sure we deserve what comes next? Genuflect before her covenant and find your way. Step out from the shadows of damask and marble, cruel and cold. Fall into her divine feminine softness, restful curve of her clavicle, the tenderness of her thighs. They taught you to wait for the man you'll marry, because if you learn what their praise sounds like, feels like, you'll stay in bed on a Sunday morning worshiping at your own altar. And look what you've found. God is a woman. Lay down and let's pray. They teach you early all the ways a body can sin without you knowing it. Your soul, so corruptible and delicate, trapped in a vile and heavy thing. All bad girls underneath. Now confess before the watchful eyes of stained glass and stone. All this jewel-bright beauty isn't meant for you. But she knows better. All that can corrupt is your silence and shame, your pain, and we refuse to live in pain. Praise be to sweetness, soft and kind. God is a woman. Fall to your knees and you might get blessed. Thank you. Okay, that was one of my fun odes that I write every now and then about musicians that I like, artists that I like. So that was a fun one so that you'll like me. And the rest of them were kind of dark and stormy. A little light, but dark and stormy. All right. My second poem, the title is A Leaving. I will likely leave my body well before I die. Memories and speech evaporate into the night sky, constellations I might recall, navigating my way by starlight, that primordial instinct to look upward. If the day should come when I no longer man the helm, I beg of you, cast me into the waves, return me to salt and stardust, unknowable and dark. I do not fear them. We have held each other before. Oof, I'm just blowing right through these, and I got 15 minutes. Guess I'm gonna freestyle a little because I didn't prepare. I did prepare, but I'm blowing through them, as I said. Okay. Can you tell I'm nervous? I'm so sorry. I'm normally not like this. I think it's the shoes. These aren't my poetry shoes. Anyway, my next poem is dedicated to the Whydah Pirate Museum in Yarmouth. I haven't gotten there yet, but I will this summer, and they've got some cool things happening, and so this poem is about them, kind of, but I'm sorry, I'll just recite it. The title is, They Found Sam Bellamy's Bones in the Wreckage. 300 years I've rested in a concretion tailored to my bones by my sweetest love. Her undulating arms have cradled me, while your steamers and tankards spliced, carving your paths into her belly, curdled her black and steaming, pilfering her most beloved beasts, and now I, her secret thing. 'Twas already a tired saying in my time, the captain goes down with his ship, an honorable death, a triumph of will. They never let on that it's not chosen, that your captain is first driven mad with lust by the fog and the foam, and you must heed in the end, must come to heel. I'd seen enough all over this God-forsaken pit, pillaging, brutalizing, and all for what? Land? A careless, dusty thing. And here you are again, taking what you have no right to, disturbing our peace, destroying her most careful art, a sailor's grave, a lover's embrace. Thank you. That poem was about a pirate, just in case you were wondering. All right. Hang on, I'm sorry. All right, I have one more. I'm throwing in one random one, Dawn, sorry. This is another one of my series of odes. And I love this one, but I'm scared to read it out loud. So here it goes. This is your first time hearing it out loud. It's an ode to every time I die, which is a band. I have followed you from the living room to the Middle East, each dark, sweating corner of our shared universe, more difficult to control than the last, your power growing the tempest of bodies and voices and memories, flooding the basement and shaking the walls. Your words have reached in and pulled out the poet and the animal. This dance floor you've built has cared for me in all my smallness and fear. I have been righted and steadied, shoved along and celebrated. Even when it got too hard to hold my own against the fray, I sat at the bottom, my legs going numb. You came swinging through, grabbed me by my shirt, hoisted me to my feet, blood streaming down your face, wild smile and shining eyes. You shook me, screamed, "Are you okay?" And what I hear is, "Does anything still hurt? Can you feel the music pulsing beneath us? Can't you feel that bass in your chest? How could anything still hurt in all this chaos, in all this beauty?" Thank you. Okay. All right. I have one more poem, and then I'm going to talk to you guys about anomaly poetry. So this poem I wrote a little while ago, and actually Nick got ahead of me in the school project and wrote one just like it after Patricia Gomes. And, well, not just like it, obviously. He's wildly talented, and I don't sound anything like him. But we both wrote from a place of love for New Bedford and a desire to see her become what she can be. So this is a poem for you, New Bedford. Little harbor full of light, cradle of the dark Atlantic, how we were indebted to your shores, so many little islands left behind in search of something more. So many hands have built you, bricklayers, fishermen, carpenters, artists. What promises you made. Let us keep them, for the sake of our shared history, for our families who labored to give us what we have. This little harbor, full of light, it took them all to build it, and it will take us all to keep the promise. Thank you. All right, thank you. That's my poetry for tonight. So I just have a few things to talk about in regards to our little poetry group here. So I am part of Anomaly Poetry, which is a collective of a couple of poets here based in New Bedford. In the before times, we hosted an open mic night on AHA Nights down at the Co-Creative Center. And we still do that on Zoom. So if you do want to participate with us and read your own poetry to folks, you can do so on Zoom next week, Thursday, April 8th at 8 p.m. As I said, live on Zoom. So follow us on our social media accounts to get that update. We also pride ourselves on being a group that welcomes newbies. So whether that's to reading and performing like this or writing in general. We're cool, we're supportive, and we love to hear your work. As I said, we're open to all. Just gotta follow us on social media to get those Zoom codes, and you can come hang out with us. We also offer an opportunity for publishing. We are currently opening up submissions for our summer anthology series, Rituals, which will be published in June of this year. And so we are accepting up to 2 poems, 2 pieces of artwork, or prose pieces of 600 words or less. You can find all that information on our social media, but please gather up your materials and submit to us at Domesticated Primate. We're going to publish that again in June. And the cool thing about those little anthology series is that we get to host a party for the release with the Roach Jones Duff House up on County Street. Given that it is going to be June, we are hopeful that we are going to have that party outside in the beautiful gardens of the Roach Jones Duff House with limited capacity, masks, social distancing, all that good stuff. But we are hopeful that that will be an in-person event where you can hear live poetry and see our poets do what they do best. And so, yeah, thank you so much again for the opportunity. Thank you to the CVPA Star Series for welcoming us back again. We got a couple more weeks of this with music and visual art, so please stay tuned every Thursday, 6 to 8. And then next Thursday, you can join Anomaly for the open mic at 8 o'clock. See how we did that? Nice little segue. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure reading for you, and see you soon. Bye.
Thank you, Sarah, and great job as always. Up next, I'm going to pull up our final poet. Our final poet performs under the name Testify. Testify inspires hope as an artist, songwriter, and dancer with her faith-based recovery movement called Inspired Healing. She is also a poet with CLMG Poetry and a member of Third Eye Unlimited. The images you will see during her set are of her own work. Come on up, Testify.
Testing, okay. Hi, good evening, everyone. Like he said, my name is Testify. And I have some poetry for you tonight, and it's perspective poetry. So my hope is that my poetry inspires hope, and it's going to touch on healing grief, trauma, and having the courage to face it, process it, and grow through it. So I pray my poetry gives you hope. This first piece I wrote is called Space and Time. Space and time are necessary for the composition of music, the lapse of a dance, for the completion of a work of art. It's to be done in divine order, according to a God who's beyond space and time. Space and time is necessary for growth. Whether a tree, a fire, an idea, a person, or a nation, it takes space and time to grow and progress. Here and now, is the only place in which space and time meet at the center. You realize the continued existence of all that is in the present moment. And you finally realize why you need space and time to grow and perceive it all. Whether a relationship is long distance, too close for comfort and safety, or long-term or short-lived, you are expected to put into relationships. You reap what you sow. How do you fill that space if you are empty? How do you let others in if you are already too full? How long do you give somebody your time if they are not present? Why invest your time in empty promises and fantasies when right now is potent with possibility? The images in our mind are perceived and held in space and time. The way that you fill your mind with experience and knowledge will determine the lens you look through, your ability to learn new information and retain it. Brains are plastic. They're malleable. We can measure ourselves and our results over space and time. All we ever have is the here and now. Grief is dealt with in the now. The pain is present as much as the memory is. The moment is gone and past, and yet your presence lingers in my heart. It's funny how love does that, and how memory makes it possible. I think of the time we shared. I think of the time we shared, and how the void spills, and how the void fills the space in my heart where you used to be. Memories from the past are recalled in the present. A vision that is held in my mind is like when I held you in a hug. Grief takes time and space to heal. Healing takes space and time to be accomplished. I trust God now to heal and guide me in the depths of my grief. I trust God is present to heal my past traumas, memories, and scars. In my inner space, I hold peace, love, faith, and hope. Right now, I embrace God and all that I'm meant to become over space and time. A continuum of cycles, the fourth dimension transcended through introspection, present moment awareness, and through love, a timeless power. An acorn is destined to become an oak of righteousness, as it is planted in the Lord for his splendor. Its destiny is already set. Its days are numbered. But to grow is a result of a lapse in space and time. God is here now. Seek his kingdom and his righteousness first. Over time, the truth will be revealed. Wow. I just want to share that these poems that I write in healing my grief and trauma, as you see, it's making me cry. I did not expect that at all. That's a testament to the power of poetry and introspection and embracing the healing process. So thank you for having me, for hearing my story, for receiving me. I'm really thankful for every soul that hears this. I pray it inspires you to honor your grief, to trust it. And so these images in the background are they're actually a result of grief from 2020. And so it's kind of splattered all over the walls. It looks really cool in here. But the beautiful thing about a phoenix rising is that you need fire, and that to make a diamond you need pressure. And so for whatever you're going through, trust that there is a soul lesson in there. I believe that. And so this next piece I wrote is called "The Light Needs Darkness to Shine." If the night sky wasn't dark, how could the stars shine bright? If we never encountered evil, how could we recognize the light? If the revelation didn't spark, would we truly have our sight? And if we never had a loss, how would it feel to win the fight? If our hearts were never broken, what would it mean for us to heal? And if the truth was never spoken, how could we know it to be real? If our arms were never open, then how would a hug feel? If our spirit continues hoping, the living word becomes a meal. If I never wrote this poem, would you take the time to think? Or would you pick up the phone? Our life is gone in a blink. If you spend some time alone, then maybe the truth will sink. A life beyond our flesh and bones, living water, take a drink. This next poem is a fruit of the introspection process, the process of journaling, documenting, reflecting, being honest with yourself, and continually doing that over years, and you notice patterns, you notice, you catch yourself, you get to know yourself through writing. So this is a writer's poem. This poem goes out to all the writers, thinkers, introspection folks, the poets, you name it. Goes like this. The pen on the paper, a visible expression, creatively honest, the perfect confession. Once it is written, it cannot be denied. Vulnerable and transparent, I will not hide. Painful acknowledgments, fears are discovered. Shame, guilt, and secrets intend to be uncovered. Pressure in my brain, heavy on my feet, sorrow in my heart, the scribbles on the sheet. Questions lead to answers, insights to be gained, affirmations of the truth, controlled and contained. Observe your thought process, allow the words to flow. As my penmanship fluctuates, each emotion will show. What am I accepting of? Who am I rejecting? My pain in life is the resistance that I'm projecting. Each correction made in ink, dissatisfaction is evident. Improvement, not perfection. The content is irrelevant. Words are energy. They come alive when read and spoken. Art is a gift from spirit meant to heal what is broken. A witness to my heartbeat, origin of my essence, perceiving my intelligence, a symptom of my presence. All that matters is that you write it down. It doesn't matter how. The power to decree your life is only in the now. This next piece is called Pressure. And these poems, they invoke emotion, they make you think. But like I said, the point of these poems is to get you to think differently about the things that we dread or that we fear, that we resist. And so I hope you're inspired by this piece called Pressure. Pressure. How do we endure? It's ever increasing, more than before. So much pressure. head down to the floor, between society and gravity. How do we endure all the pressure from within and without? Hopeless thoughts lead to misery. How do we get out? Escaping pressure, like the force from a balloon, with little space to get by, something has to change soon. Forceful pressure, the will to do. If you need to see a change in life, it has to start in you. Unnecessary pressure, self-inflicted hell. We're enslaved by a mental state when it's an open cell. Relieve the pressure. The truth to you I tell. We are loved, we're forgiven, have faith, and be well. Under pressure, why are you surprised? We're competing with our old selves and unbelieving lies. Understand the pressure, far beneath the skies. Even a flower defies gravity until it's realized. Frustrated by the pressure? Change your perspective. We all endure suffering. It's not personal, it's collective. Social pressure, each experience respective. Self-responsibility is a moral directive. A diamond under pressure, a classic transformation. Our spirit endures suffering to spark a revelation. Don't resist the pressure. Spark a conversation. Take necessary action and expect elevation. Be grateful for the pressure. So, with that piece, I want to express gratitude for the opportunity to share my gift, to share my story, and gratitude for this art. The art of speaking, the art of writing, of painting, the art of creativity that we could heal. Inspired healing, for me, inspired healing is the transformative power of the creative process. And so for me, it's faith-fueled by the Holy Spirit. I have faith in my gifts through the Lord. But we all have healing through the arts. That's what culture really is about, is how we endure this thing we called life as humans through this beautiful thing we called art. And so the last piece that I have is called The Gift of Artistic Expression. What a blessing, this healing art, to express creatively. As I de-stress, my life improves qualitatively. No need to impress. I need to get rest. I don't mean to digress, but I do more as of lately. As the energy flows, I expand and move forward. With intuition, I direct my attention and head toward balance in life, the basics, seeking homeostasis, achievable with patience. Oh, how gracious is the Lord. To you, is that an expression or a rhetorical question? There's what's true and there's the truth. It's a matter of perception. You can have what you say, but you say what you have. Wise words from the Son of God. Pause for reflection. So that's all I had to share with you all. I am very grateful for this opportunity. I pray that whoever hears my poetry is inspired, that you have hope, that you can endure your struggle, you can endure your suffering, your heartbreak, your grief, your trauma, that you can go deep, you can even write. And when you do that, you find that you have peace, that you have confidence, that you can heal. And so with that, I thank you.
Thank you, Nick, Rayana, Craig, Emma, Sarah, and Amanda for a wonderful night of spoken word. Good evening, my name is Vera Levitt, and I'm a gallery director here at UMass Dartmouth, College of Visual and Performing Arts. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in for this 9th edition of the CVPA Star Series. We will meet here and online 4 more times every Thursday through the end of April. The CVPA Star Series is produced and curated in collaboration with Don Burton Media and Beatrice & Company, with support from UMass Dartmouth and the City of New Bedford and Be Festive. In-kind support is provided by Chase Canopy and Lightworks Productions. And I would also like to thank our Dean, Lawrence Jenkins, for his support for this project. Please join us next Thursday, AHA Night on April 8th, as we feature our amazing and talented graduating students who will talk about their work in our MFA exhibition with live music to follow. So you will hear from Ryan Cooley, Taylor Hickey, Madison Moreno, Danielle O'Malley, and Emma Young. You can also reserve your time ticket to see the exhibition at this building at Star Store through our website under UMass Dartmouth Galleries. Thank you again for tuning in, and I wish you a pleasant evening. Thank you. Bye.